The road to open conflict is rarely sudden, it's paved with failed negotiations and mounting warnings. The Israel-Iran crisis boiled over after years of tension, fueled by Iran's advancing nuclear program. As Tehran enriched uranium to near weapons grade, Israel's existential red line was crossed. Diplomatic efforts collapsed, talks in Oman ended in acrimony, with the US demanding zero enrichment and Iran refusing. In June 2025, the IAEA issued a rare censure, citing Iran's lack of transparency. With diplomacy dead, war rhetoric surged. Reports confirmed Israel was preparing for a military solution. The US quietly evacuated embassy staff and restricted movement, signaling the region was bracing for impact. Iran responded defiantly, announcing a new, deeply buried enrichment site and upgrades to Fordow. For Israel, this was the final straw: high-purity enrichment, no oversight, and hardened facilities. The time for waiting was over. Israel's decision to act was set. Before dawn, Israel launched Operation Decisive Moment, a massive, coordinated assault on Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure. 200 aircraft struck with over 300 precision-guided munitions, targeting Natanz, Kandab, missile bases, and IRGC command centers. The operation aimed not just to delay Iran's nuclear program, but to cripple its military leadership and missile capabilities. Mossad operatives on the ground provided real-time intelligence and sabotage, amplifying the airstrike's impact. Simultaneously, Israeli cyber units disabled Iran's air defenses, clearing the way for jets. The attack killed top Iranian commanders Hossein Salami and Mohammad Bagheri, and several senior nuclear scientists. Israel claimed no major radiation leaks, but civilian injuries were reported near targeted sites. The strike was a calculated high-stakes gamble to reshape the region's balance of power. Iran's leadership was left reeling, but the world braced for their response. The Middle East had entered a new dangerous phase. In the aftermath, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the world, framing the strike as self-defense to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. He insisted Israel had exhausted all options and acted to protect not just itself, but global security. The US clarified it wasn't directly involved, but had been notified in advance, focusing on protecting its personnel. The Pentagon had already repositioned assets, anticipating Iranian retaliation. Israel's doctrine of preemption was invoked. A nuclear-armed Iran was deemed an existential threat. The strike was presented as a necessary if painful measure to avert catastrophe. The world now watched for Iran's next move. Iran's response was swift. A swarm of 100 drones launched toward Israel, signaling defiance and capability. The drone's journey was tracked across the region, but Israel's advanced air defenses, aided by Jordanian forces, intercepted most of them. The attack caused little physical damage but sent a powerful message. Iran would not be cowed. Supreme Leader Khamenei vowed harsh retribution, escalating rhetoric and preparing for a larger response. The drone attack placated domestic calls for vengeance and put Israel and its allies on high alert. The world waited, anxious about Iran's promised escalation. The initial drone strike was just the opening move in a high-stakes confrontation. Psychological pressure mounted as both sides braced for what would come next. The region was on edge, with the threat of wider war looming. Iran's leaders promised their next move would be far more consequential. The conflict's shockwaves hit global markets instantly. Oil prices surged over 6%, stoking fears of a broader energy crisis. Stock markets worldwide plunged as investors fled to safe havens. Airspace over Iran, Iraq, and Jordan was closed, disrupting flights and supply chains. Governments scrambled, Americans were urged to leave, and European diplomats pushed for de-escalation. The world feared a cycle of escalation could spiral out of control. The Middle East became a no-go zone, its instability threatening global economic health. All eyes turned to the region, bracing for the next tremor. The world wondered, how would Iran retaliate? Iran's options ranged from a massive missile barrage, its arsenal could overwhelm Israeli defenses, to activating its network of proxies. Its hypersonic and heavy warhead missiles posed a direct threat to Israeli cities and bases. Iran could also disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, threatening global oil supplies and triggering an international crisis. Proxy forces like Hezbollah, the Houthis, and militias in Iraq and Syria offered Tehran plausible deniability for attacks. Iran's defense minister warned all U.S. bases in the region were now targets. The risk of escalation was real, with the potential to draw in the US and other powers. Iran's asymmetric strategy made its next move unpredictable. The world braced for a harsh, multi-layered response. Iran's most flexible weapon is its network of proxies, the axis of resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon with over 150,000 rockets could overwhelm Israel's defenses and strike deep into its territory. The Houthis in Yemen could target Israeli cities and disrupt maritime trade, extending the conflict's reach. Militias in Iraq and Syria could attack Israeli and US positions, raising the stakes for American involvement. By activating these groups, Iran could wage a multi-front war, bleeding Israel and its allies without direct confrontation. This strategy complicates any response and threatens to regionalize the conflict. Proxy warfare allows Iran to inflict pain while avoiding a direct, all-out war on its own soil. The threat of a punishing war of attrition loomed large. Analysts debated Iran's next move: immediate escalation or a drawn-out war of attrition. A massive missile barrage would inflict heavy damage but risk devastating Israeli and US retaliation. Such a move could threaten the regime's survival. More likely, Iran would opt for a slow-burn campaign, proxy attacks, cyber warfare, and maritime disruption over months. This approach drains Israeli resources, keeps the region on edge, and avoids a clear trigger for all-out war. Israel faces a complex challenge: respond forcefully without escalating uncontrollably. Iran's nuclear program, dispersed and deeply buried, can't be destroyed outright. A failed strike could push Iran to race for a bomb, making the situation even more dangerous. The slow-burn strategy plays to Iran's strengths in asymmetric warfare. The world watched, uncertain which path Iran would choose. The world stands on a knife's edge, facing a future shaped by the choices of Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington. Will Iran risk everything on a direct strike or wage a shadow war through proxies? Could the conflict expand, drawing in the US or neighboring states? Will Hezbollah's arsenal force Israel into a wider war? Will American forces be targeted? Regional powers must decide, contain the conflict, or take sides. Is there still hope for diplomacy, or has violence gained unstoppable momentum? The coming days will decide the region's fate. What do you think? Will this crisis spiral, or is there a path back from the brink?